Hi, I'm Kerry Blaser, Mary Magdalene soul. I am back to talk today about why the church repressed the divine feminine and silenced women. And I'm just trying to understand what happened because I have a master's degree in East Asian religious studies, but I didn't go West. And so I don't understand. So in trying to understand myself, I'm trying to learn all of this and then sharing it with you as I kind of understand myself. So in doing some research about, divine feminine in 2,000 years ago in Europe and the Middle East, I came upon Gnosis being universal knowledge and Sophia being universal wisdom and how they're divine counterparts. So, and I found a YouTube video, and I haven't figured out how to have the little thing yet. I'm a newbie. So I'm figuring it out. Anyway, I'm going to play, you can hear the text and I'll stop and talk about it. But this is like, the way they describe it is just, thank you. It's so clear what happened, and I'll just kind of summarize what we're going to hear is that I'll let them do the kind of divine story. But what happened in the 2nd century is that they wanted to unify all the different Christian sects, and there was focus on unifying Europe under an imperial rule and hierarchy, male dominance, so. In a lot of early Christianity, Jesus and Mary, they, made people give away all their belongings and live in communes. I mean, there's a reason there's kibbutz, the communal living in Israel. There's a reason for that. And so, but if you want to control everybody, equality between men and women, not that they have the same role, but I have a womb, they don't. I got an innie, they got an outie. And so we have separate roles. And, the way I see it is women are universal knowledge like Sophia, and men are universal wisdom like Gnosis. And the Gnostics, the early Christians, they have a lot of texts showing Jesus as the divine masculine and Mary Magdalene as the divine feminine. But, Mary Magdalene was called a prostitute in the 6th century. And in the 4th century, when they created they accepted 4 of the 21 Gospels for the Bible, they were told to burn everything. And so now we've only found sections of the Gospel of Mary, which is really sad. So let's start listening about, what the history is, and so we can understand why God is looked at as male. When before the 2nd century, in Middle Eastern kind of worldviews and European, it was all about divine masculine, divine feminine. So why do we repress the feminine? And then what happened? Here we go. Okay. We turn up the volume. Here we go.
There existed a divine feminine presence whose power and significance was deliberately, systematically erased from our spiritual consciousness. In the flickering lamplight of forgotten caves, the truth was preserved, a truth that would remain hidden for nearly 2 millennia. The true creator of our universe was not a solitary male deity, but rather a divine feminine force known as Sophia.
And I'll stop there. So, I didn't know all this as I was going through my healing journey. My healing journey includes a plethora of enlightenment experiences. So, in March of 2024, that was my first enlightenment experience. And when after I heard in my head, enlightenment, and I'm like vibrating really high in my recliner going, oh my God, what's happening? I'm taking off. The wisdom came through, and then I faced my catastrophic fears about my daughters being sexually abused. So, which wasn't true, but they were just fears because of my childhood. So, but the focus on the wisdom is, first I was shown the first responders. And why? Because I helped, part of my healing journey, I attracted 2 Fire Academy instructors into my life. And so our hearts opened to each other, and I healed and they healed. So first responders. So I saw the first responders, I'm like, oh, well, they have a mental health crisis. Like, they're all unhealthy. Okay, what about the family? Oh, so much divorce. That's just unhealthy. Okay, male and female relations. Oh, that's just messed up. I'm like, okay, take me back to the beginning. I'm talking to the universe, right? In my garage, like I'm here in my garage right now. So I'm like, just take me back to the beginning. There was a beginning, and then what? Like, what happened next? And so I could see that I'm like, okay, so there was God, and then what? But I'm like, okay, well, but let's, God's male? How is there any kind of replication, reproduction kind of with a single entity? I mean, you can't have kids with one. You can't grow and expand with one. So, and I'm like, okay, so we give God credit for creation and orchestration. And we're going to learn why in this video. But I saw, I'm like, that's our problem. Not, studying this or anything. I'm like, okay, that's the problem, is that we have repressed the feminine and we've given the masculine credit for feminine work. And we wonder why women don't feel valued, why we say we're not equal. This is the divine equality that women are really speaking of. So people make a fun, oh, you want to be equal? Like today I saw Pearl had this video, a short, and it was stupid. These a woman and a man had a game going, and if one failed, and the other one hit it with like a metal pot. Now, how hard a woman can hit and how hard a man can hit is totally different, and the strength of the bones is totally different. So a woman hitting a man, I mean, the chances with that is she's really going to hurt him are small because his bones are stronger and she's not that strong. But him hitting her is a whole other story because he's a lot stronger and her bones are a lot weaker. She crashed out on the floor when it happened to her. This is not the equality that women are really talking about. And I know they can't communicate it, and that's why I'm here to communicate it for women. That we have a voice. Speaking is feminine. Action is masculine. So telling women not to talk? Like, what are you talking about? That's what we have to do. And I understand women talking is a challenge, but what I found in my healing work, because of the men I attracted in my life, two of whom being Justin Waller and his best friend Andrew Tate, so you kind of understand the kind of men that I attracted in my life, they're not great communicators. And so these men, narcissistic men, I attract narcissists. Psychologists have said that they all get together and emotionally support each other, and they don't go to women for support. Well, that sounds like the church. We're going to learn it here. I'm going off a little. It's okay. Let's get back to this and see what happens next. And who's Sophia and how did this happen and why are we here? Right? Okay. So we'll listen. Okay.
I'm about to take you on a journey through forbidden knowledge, through texts deemed heretical, through symbols suppressed, through a cosmic drama of creation, fall, and redemption that unveils the most significant spiritual cover-up in human history.
Okay, next they get into the Gnostic ideas of how a demiurge, like this other god, was created. And I'm going to link the video below, so if I recommend watching the whole thing. But I'm going to jump ahead to another part that I think that I want to talk about. Not that this isn't important, it is, but to get to why Mary Magdalene was repressed, which is really the point of my video. So let me skip forward for a second here to 350.
Beyond conceptualization, beyond even being itself, this ultimate divine reality was neither male nor female, but a transcendent fullness from which all existence emanated. This divine pleroma, or fullness, consisted of paired masculine and feminine spiritual entities called aeons.
I mean, that's my experience. And, paired masculine, feminine entities, that was my kind of enlightenment experience last fall, in fall of 2024, when I had reached out to JC, Jesus Christ Soul. His name is Jason Colvin. He's head of global security at GoDaddy. So I reached out to him in November after I hadn't seen him in 40 years. And I totally repressed him because there's so much pain between us. So this other profound enlightenment experience I had, I was like, after I reached out and his soul opened to me, I'm like, oh, okay, whoa, this is different. What's going on? And I asked the universe, how are masculine and feminine souls created? And so they told me, which is exactly here what they're talking about. So first there was a soul an embodied masculine and feminine. And then to expand our consciousness, to see ourselves and experience ourselves, we split into two because our opposite is our best mirror. Like you only know what tall is when you know what short is, right? So when they split into two, this is how it happens. So the intent to create the masculine actually creates the feminine. Shows you how important intent is. And the feminine soul tears out half of her heart chakra to create the masculine soul. Divine pairing.
Emanations of the divine that represented different aspects of its nature. In most Gnostic systems, Sophia was the youngest and most dynamic of these divine aeons. Her name...
They're going to get into some Gnostic beliefs, but I'm going to let this play out because it really gives some good information about how this all happened and how they see their worldview. And this Gnostic worldview is so important because this is exactly what the Christians stomped out when they wanted to unify everything under an imperial rule, like Constantine's a prime example in the 4th century. And that's when the hierarchy, the patriarchy, women are suppressed, women are silenced because men are in charge.
From the Greek word for wisdom, reflected her nature as the embodiment of divine understanding and creativity. But unlike the other aeons, Sophia was characterized by an intense curiosity, a passionate desire to comprehend the source from which she emanated. As scholar Elaine...
So, it sounds a lot like me. I have to know everything. I have to research everything. It's feminine work to dive into the shadow, into the subconscious, and understand how to pull out more self-belief, more self-confidence. That's why men, there's a saying, behind every great man is an amazing woman. That amazing woman is stellar at shadow work, helping her man see himself so he can believe in himself, have more self-confidence, go out in the world and provide and protect for himself, his wife, and his family. That's her role, is to dive into the darkness.
In Pagel's writes, Sophia embodied the feminine principle of intuitive wisdom as contrasted with the masculine principle of rational comprehension.
There's a Cherokee proverb that's in my book. It's the dedication of my book. It says, a woman's highest calling is to connect a man to his soul so he can unite with source, inside work. A man's highest calling is to protect a woman so she can walk the earth unharmed. And that is aligned with what they just said.
This duality was not seen as oppositional, but complementary, two essential aspects of divine consciousness working in harmony.
Yeah.
But what transformed Sophia from merely one divine principle among many into the tragic heroine of the Gnostic creation myth was her extraordinary act of independent creation, an act with cosmic consequences that would shape the very nature of our material existence.
Yeah, this is where they get into a lot of information about Gnostics. I mean, early Christians and Gnostics are looking for a direct experience with the divine and not something orchestrated by an institution. Like Jesus's actual teachings were, Christ consciousness, connect with the divine within, and love thy neighbor. There's nothing about a controlling God that you need to go to learn everything. You need to go to men. And he even says, don't listen to them, don't listen to them, listen to your heart. And that truth, Rumi, 13th century mystic, follow your heart, it knows the way. Why follow your heart? Because your heart connects you to your soul. And your soul is a microcosm of the macrocosm, the universe. And it knows everything. And it plans our lives and orchestrates our lives, and all of our souls are constantly communicating through our heart spaces, which physicists have proven. They can, they can measure energy. If we can create a nuclear bomb, we can measure, our souls, right? So there's a lot to get into here, and so I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit. And we already went that far, and I need to keep going.
In the stillness of the pleroma, Sophia gazed into the unfathomable depths of the divine source. Unlike her fellow Aeons, who remained content within their perfect symmetry, Sophia was moved by an overwhelming desire to comprehend the unknowable.
She wanted to expand her consciousness. That's all this is. Diving more into the shadow, expanding for everybody. I mean, I just feel like I'm digging through like dirt constantly in my healing work. But that's my job, is to be in that shadow and be the light. Know how to transform emotional wounds into personal wisdom. There's diamonds in our shadow. We just got to know how to get in there and find them.
To glimpse the face of the ineffable one, this desire, this passion, led her to an unprecedented act of creation. According to the Apocryphon of John, the Sophia of the...
I mean, this story is the creation of the world, so we can all come here and see ourselves, so we can come, be souls having a human experience, humans being imperfect, and then we can learn how to transform our wounds into wisdom and become higher vibrating beings. That's why we're here. This creation story is exactly why we're here.
Epinoia, being an Aeon, conceived a thought from herself and the conception of the invisible spirit and foreknowledge. She wanted to bring forth a likeness out of herself without the consent of the spirit he had not approved, and without her consort, and without his consideration. This independent act of creation was a cosmic transgression, not because it was evil, but because it was premature, unbalanced, undertaken without the harmonious participation of her masculine counterpart.
I don't know this whole history very well, so I don't feel comfortable really getting into what exactly they're talking about here. So I'm just gonna let it keep going because of my lack of knowledge. And I'm an academic. I have a master's degree. Like, I need to know. If I don't know, then I'm not gonna talk about it.
From this imbalanced creative impulse came a being unlike any that had existed before, incomplete, ignorant of its origins, yet possessed of enormous creative power.
That is an unawake human. Unawake, not conscious human. And then when we're born, like, some kids are born and they're aware, but generally we're born and we forget that we're divine beings. And, the point is to remember that you're a divine being, love yourself and embrace yourself, and then bring out more gifts. Like the gifts that I have, my shamanic gifts, everyone has. I just have done more work on my soul. That's all.
The Apocryphon of John describes this moment. And because of the invincible power which is in her, her thought did not remain idle, and something came out of her which was imperfect and different from her appearance, because she had created it without her consort. And it was dissimilar to the likeness of its mother, for it has another form. This being was Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, the false god who would go on to create the material cosmos as we know.
The demiurge, huh? So, the church was trying to get away from Gnosticism, but did it really embody the demiurge? I'll let you think about that.
It, described as having the face of a lion and the body of a serpent, Yaldabaoth was the embodiment of cosmic ignorance, unaware of the pleroma from which his mother had emerged, believing himself to be the only god in existence. The text continues.
Oh. Any men in my life that have ever acted that way? Just saying. I've acted that way.
And she cast it away from her outside that place, that no one of the immortal ones might see it, for she had created it in ignorance, and she surrounded it with a
See, that story around, like, I would say it's innocence, not ignorance. But this is where I have a little bit of a problem, but, I don't know. I'm not knowledgeable about, I'm a newbie. So, but that's just my take.
Luminous cloud, and she placed a throne in the middle of the cloud, that no one might see it except the Holy Spirit. Here, we encounter the first great tragedy in the Gnostic creation myth. Sophia, ashamed of her incomplete creation, cast Yaldabaoth away from the pleroma into the void beyond divine fullness. But in doing so, she became divided. A portion of her divine power remained trapped within her flawed offspring, while her higher aspect remained in the pleroma.
One way to interpret that, because I don't know this stuff, is that we have a higher self. So we have a higher self that doesn't get as impacted by our wounds, that can see more clearly and help guide us. So there's multiple aspects of self, is that we have a higher self that has a higher perspective, and then we have our kind of waking reality, which is the soul's presentation in this lifetime.
This cosmic division of Sophia is critical to understanding both the Gnostic view of our world and the ultimate goal of Gnostic spirituality. With a portion of his mother's divine power, Yaldabaoth proceeded to create the material cosmos, not as an act of love or wisdom, but as an unconscious imitation of the pleroma he dimly perceived. He fashioned archons, cosmic rulers, to help him govern his creation, each one more limited and ignorant than himself. And in the ultimate act of cosmic hubris, Yaldabaoth declared, "I am God, and there is no other God besides me."
That's all I'm going to say.
Declaration reveals the profound theological revolution contained within Gnostic thought. The God of the material world, the deity who claimed to be the only God, was not the true divine source at all, but an ignorant pretender, unaware of the transcendent reality beyond himself. For the Gnostics, this insight explained the apparent contradiction between the jealous, wrathful deity portrayed in parts of the Hebrew Bible and the God of boundless love described by Jesus. These were not the same being. The God who demanded blood sacrifice, who punished transgressions with floods and fire, who required absolute obedience.
Do you know any God that sounds like that? Punishing God. But early Christians rejected Gnosticism, the Gnostics, created their own church. And what kind of God did they put up at the top of the church? Oh, interesting.
This was Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, not the true divine source. The material world itself, being the creation of this flawed deity, was seen not as intrinsically evil, but as a mixture of divine light from Sophia and ignorant darkness from the demiurge. Within this imperfect creation, within the very bodies of human beings, were trapped particles of divine light, sparks of Sophia herself, fragmented throughout creation.
Yeah. Our body is a reflection of our soul. Every person is a divine being. Every person is a divine being. The soul is eternal, not the body. We all know the body can't live forever. Come on now. Let's be reasonable here. We're grown-ass adults that can be reasonable, right? Let's be reasonable and logical. The soul is eternal. There is no resurrection. Mary was there to help his soul go to heaven because that's her role, to connect a man to his soul. So her being there and supporting him in that terrible process was supporting her man. That's a woman of valor. That's a woman I respect. Wow. She was pregnant. She was pregnant at the crucifixion. And they want to make the crucifixion so special. Thousands of people were crucified all the fucking time in Jerusalem. Okay.
Thus, the central cosmic drama of Gnostic spirituality was the redemption of Sophia, the recovery of her fragmented divine light from the material world and its return to the pleroma. And this cosmic redemption was intimately connected to human spiritual awakening. For when humans awaken to their true...
Okay, that speaks volumes to me, is that when you find Sophia inside of yourself, there's the awakening. Enlightenment is an emotion. I have a master's degree in East Asian religious studies, so I lived in Chinese Buddhist monasteries, and I met the Karmapa, which is one below the Dalai Lama in Tibetan Buddhism, when he was 7 years old. No one in Tibet, he escaped when he was 14, no one ever taught me that enlightenment is an emotion was exactly what they talked about. So within our bodies, within our soul, is the capacity to enlighten ourselves and unveil all the wisdom that's in our soul. So our souls are microcosms of the macrocosm. So all the wisdom and knowledge in the universe is also in each of our souls. So we don't have, it's not like a download from out there. We're not getting anything from out there. We're unveiling things inside of ourselves. Like, how many times have you heard someone say, you know, everyone's like an onion with layers? Well, those layers are emotional pain. And so when you get through the emotional pain and you transform that wound into wisdom, you unveil more wisdom inside your soul. You vibrate higher and you automatically become more influential over the whole collective. Because you're higher vibrating, you have more wisdom, you have more knowledge. So that's logical that we would create a system where those souls have more impact. They've done more work. They've been successful at doing more work on kind of orchestrating and working their souls so that they can vibrate higher more often.
Divine nature, when they achieved gnosis or direct spiritual knowledge, they were simultaneously participating in the cosmic redemption of Sophia herself. The poignant beauty of this myth lies in its psychological resonance. Sophia's fall was not a moral failure, but a passionate overreaching, a desire to know that exceeded the boundaries of cosmic order. Her redemption was
I would say a passionate ascension, not overreach. Because if you're this big, how do you expand? You got to get bigger. So you got to go into the darkness. That's the woman's job. It wasn't a mistake. That's her job.
Not punishment, but the recovery of wholeness, the reintegration of fragmented consciousness. In this sense, the myth of Sophia speaks directly to the human condition, our sense of separation from our source, our intuition of a greater wholeness beyond our ordinary awareness, and our yearning for reunion with that from which we came.
Yeah, ascension, enlightenment, this is feminine, this is internal work. So it makes so much sense. They're connecting all of this to Sophia, divine feminine. Makes so much sense.
But how does the Christ figure relate to this feminine-centered cosmology? In Gnostic texts, Christ appears not as the sacrificial lamb who dies for humanity's sins, but as an emissary from the pleroma, sent specifically to awaken humanity to its true divine nature, and to guide the sparks of Sophia back to their source. In texts like the Pistis Sophia, Christ is portrayed as the masculine counterpart to Sophia, her syzygy or spiritual twin. His mission is not to
Mary Magdalene will be mentioned in a second, so we're almost there. Okay.
To appease an angry Father God, but to restore the divine feminine to her rightful place in the pleroma. As the text states, I have come to lead her upward to her pristine light, that she might receive the garment that belongs to her. This understanding transforms the significance of
the garment they're talking about is the divine feminine white garment. And in like near-death experiences and visions, most people see Jesus's soul in a white garment in his divine masculine. That's his higher self. But yeah, okay, I'll keep going.
Jesus' incarnation and ministry. His teachings, particularly as preserved in texts like the Gospel of Thomas, were not about establishing a new religion, but awakening humans to the divine spark within them.
Right. Jesus taught that there's a divine spark within everybody, and that's Sophia. It's the creation. Create enlightenment inside of yourself. However, there's no external control there. That's a lot of self-belief and a lot of trust in the universe that 2,000 years ago we just didn't have. I mean, only the Mayan calendar time cycle ended in 2012. And the new time cycle is the time for self-healing. So while wisdom came through, we weren't ready to embody that wisdom fully because we weren't ready for it yet. But now we are, which is exciting. Okay.
The kingdom of God is within you, Jesus declares in Luke 17:21.
The kingdom of God is within you, so why do I need a church that punishes me and silences me Why do I need that?
A statement that aligns perfectly with Gnostic understanding. Even more revolutionary is the Gnostic interpretation of the crucifixion. Rather than the central sacrificial act that redeems humanity from sin, the crucifixion is seen as a cosmic illusion. The divine Christ cannot truly suffer and die, only the physical form he temporarily inhabited. The real resurrection is not the revival of a physical body, but the spiritual awakening that occurs when one realizes one's true divine nature.
Yeah, his soul went to, they say go to heaven, but they're all right here around us. The only reason we're not in heaven is because we haven't created it together. That's the second coming. A second coming is time for self-healing, time for equality between men and women, true equality between men and women, divine equality between men and women. And that's what I'm here to bring this wisdom in. Let's think about it. This whole idea of we're made in God's image, right? Our souls are a microcosm of the macrocosm. And if we see the macrocosm as masculine and feminine, then that's equality. Then you can embody that in the home. But when you see the universe as just masculine and you ascribe feminine values and feminine work to the masculine, then you can validate, shut up, women, be quiet, you can't rule, we know everything, and all the healing work that you've been doing, oh yeah, all the men are going to come to the church now, so we've just basically outsourced your work, your feminine value, to a masculine institution, and oh yeah, we're going to make money off that, and we're going to kill people over that. It's challenging for me.
The profound implication here is that Christ's mission was not to establish himself as an object of worship, but to point beyond himself to the divine spark within each person.
He's a model for how to do it. I'm a model for how to do it. I am not here to heal each person. I don't have time for that. Let's think about it for a second, realistically. You got to go to someone else for forgiveness to forgive yourself. That's super codependent. I mean, we want to go psychology on Jesus and the whole, you have to go to Jesus, you have to go to the cross to be forgiven. That's the biggest bullshit controlling ideology I could ever think of. You can't heal yourself without an institution? Come on now. That is lack of self-belief on a profound level. So we're going to keep going because I'm getting too upset.
As the Gospel of Philip states, you saw the Spirit, you became Spirit. You saw Christ, you became Christ. The goal was not faith in Christ, but transformation into Christ consciousness, awakening to one's own divine nature. This perspective radically transforms our understanding of salvation. In Orthodox Christianity, salvation comes through faith in Christ's sacrifice and obedience to church doctrine. In Gnostic understanding, salvation is gnosis itself, direct experiential knowledge of one's divine nature. It is not granted by an external authority, but realized through inner awakening.
That is quite a difference. The obedience sounds a lot like, is it Demiurge or the other one they created? I can't remember the name. You got to be obedient. You got to listen to someone else. I mean, Jesus just said, when they said Luke, I don't know the Bible, the kingdom of God is within. So why do I have to be obedient outside of myself? If everything is within me, why do I need an external church telling me what to do? Why is that true? How can that be true? So there's conflicts within the Bible. Yeah, it's hard for me. It's hard for me. My man got killed right in front of me, and I'm processing that, and this is how I process that. So Charlie Kirk helped me with my battle cry. And on July 16th, 2025, he said Mary is the solution to toxic feminism. And he's an evangelical, so don't really talk about Mary, but he was talking about Mary, Jesus' mother. And what I realized a few days ago is that on that exact same day is when I emailed Red Pill Leadership, because I helped Justin Wall and Andrew Tate. all of the signs and synchronicities that my soul is the same soul as Mary Magdalene. And there's a plethora, you can see it in the description, a plethora of signs and synchronicities. I was like, oh, because that spoke to me, but I spoke to him. My energy went out and he said that. So the universe is a mirror. And so I use it as a mirror to see myself, and then when I saw that my email went out in that same day, I was like, oh, wow, Mary is the solution. And then I had those enlightenment experiences to show me that our kind of the glitch in the matrix that we're having, the patriarchy, is that we don't value creation. And I didn't know about Sophia and the early Christians and how they had suppressed Sophia and suppressed Mary They had suppressed the feminine on purpose for imperial power. Okay, that's logical. That's academic. That makes sense. That makes sense to me. I understand now. And now I'm here to bring in this wisdom, Okay.
And crucially, this awakening process was understood to be equally available to women and men.
And let's take it one step further. Equally available to women and men, but it's emotional work. It's feminine work. Enlightenment is an emotion, feminine work. As the emotional center, I experience enlightenment, and then the man I'm connected to, then that opens the door for him. Because what I've noticed, the healing work, I have to process my emotions around something first, and then my masculine, JC, can process. But I have to do it first, because if there's shame, guilt, and fear in my heart, and I have him in my heart, then, he can't release it because I haven't released it. So, yeah, a lot of work to do. Okay.
The divine feminine was not subordinate to the divine masculine, but its essential complement. This theological framework naturally led to more egalitarian spiritual communities.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine if you see the divine as, divine masculine, divine feminine, and then you embody that in the house, they're equally valuable. And no one's going to say, oh, you're just a stay-at-home mom. And then you're not going to validate men cheating. So acknowledging this, that there's a divine feminine and divine masculine, divine feminine creates, divine masculine orchestrates. We can embody that in society and have a lot more equality, which women are really talking about. Now, we want equality, that we're equally important, that our voice is equally important. Yes, we have different roles. Yes. I have a womb. I create kids. I need to be home creating kids. Well, not anymore, but, I've created 3. I do my part. So this rethinking our perception of God and the divine can have is the solution. That's just how I see it. That's the solution. If people can internalize that, and that's the energy that they're working from, women will stay home more. Men will work more. Companies can align with that. Like it used to be, well, we paid the men more. He's got a family. Okay, well, I don't know. There's a lot of solutions we could come up with. Okay.
Where women could serve as prophets, teachers, and leaders.
I mean, Mary was named the top apostle because it's in the Gospels. Now they said top apostle because they couldn't, making her the center, and that she's channeling the wisdom, and that then Jesus is sharing it. I mean, that's what's happening with me and these guys. They learn the wisdom after I open it inside of myself, because wisdom is feminine. They have the knowledge, I got the wisdom.
The evidence for women's leadership in Gnostic communities comes not only from historical accounts, but from the texts themselves. The Gospel of Mary portrays Mary Magdalene as Jesus's most spiritually advanced disciple, the one who comforts and teaches the other disciples after his departure. In the Pistis Sophia, Jesus explicitly states that Mary Magdalene and John the Virgin will surpass all his disciples in the heavenly kingdom.
So, a woman and a man, he deemed them to religion to. But then in the 2nd century, the ideas of, only masculine leadership, the church, so they didn't listen to Jesus because it didn't support their narrative of an imperial hierarchy that can control everything. So, okay, let's change that.
This brings us to one of the most fascinating connections in Gnostic thought, the association between Sophia and Mary Magdalene. In several texts, Mary Magdalene is portrayed not simply as a disciple, but as the human embodiment of Sophia, the divine wisdom incarnate, the feminine counterpart to Jesus' masculine expression of divinity. This understanding casts an
I have a master's degree in religious studies. I took other classes. In June, around my birthday, because my birthday is June 25th, opposite December 25th, I had to Google, did Jesus have a wife? And I live in a Christian society in America. That's how much she was repressed. Repressed. Sure, I saw the Da Vinci Code, but I didn't really, like, oh, what? Holy Grail's a woman? Like, what? So, this is what I'm up against. This is what I'm up against, okay?
Entirely new light on the relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Far from being merely a reformed prostitute, a characterization invented by Pope Gregory I in the 6th century with no biblical basis, Mary Magdalene emerges as Jesus' spiritual equal, his partner in the cosmic work of awakening humanity.
So, I hadn't talked to JC in 40 years. And a year ago, I reached out to him, and then I could see what he'd done. He has a degree from the Air Force Academy. He has an MBA. He was an assistant special agent in charge of the FBI, worked at security at Amazon, and then now he's currently head of global security at GoDaddy. So when I saw that, I was like, I'm safe. That's a one-man wrecking show with the FBI and internet security. That's a lot of power and influence. So yeah, I felt safe. And I'm grateful that he did all that work. He did his work, and I did the spiritual work. I did the inside work. I went east and dove into enlightenment and Taoist texts, and then, he did the protection part. He honored the Cherokee proverb, and so did I.
Gnostic texts even suggest a sacred marriage between Jesus and Mary Magdalene, a ritual enactment of the cosmic reunion of masculine and feminine divine principles. While historical evidence cannot conclusively prove a physical marriage, the spiritual significance of their relationship in Gnostic thought is undeniable. They represented the divine syzygy, the balanced masculine and feminine aspects of divinity working together for cosmic restoration.
Yeah. What we need is a massive rupture and repair in society, and we kind of saw that with Charlie Kirk's assassination. There was a rupture, and then there was repair. And that's the feminine that we've been missing. There's a lot of rupture, but then there's repression, there's not repair. And the vigils, the prayer, because when you pray, all that love comes out of your heart. And then that love goes out into the universe, and we help everybody vibrate higher and do better.
The profound wisdom contained in these Gnostic teachings raises an obvious question. Why were these perspectives so thoroughly suppressed? Why does the Christianity that survived into the modern era bear so little resemblance to these earlier, more feminine-centered understandings? The answer lies in a complex interplay of theological, political, and social factors that unfolded in the 2nd through 4th centuries CE. As Christianity transitioned from a persecuted minority movement to an imperial religion, its leadership became increasingly concerned with establishing...
how do you go from let's create kibbutz to an imperial system? Well, our history shows how you do it. You repress the feminine.
In clear doctrinal boundaries, hierarchical authority structures, and conformity of belief. The Bishop Irenaeus, writing around 180 CE, was among the first to systematically attack Gnostic interpretations of Christianity. His work against heresies specifically targeted the theological diversity that characterized early Christianity, advocating instead for a single orthodox interpretation governed by apostolic succession, an unbroken line of male bishops supposedly extending back to the original apostles. This emerging orthodoxy was distinctly patriarchal in structure and theology. God was conceptualized exclusively as Father.
Sound like anybody we already talked about today? Is an imbalanced man. who doesn't embrace his feminine. To have internal balance, you have to embrace your feminine. It's like if you look at the yin-yang symbol, 90% white is masculine, 10% black is feminine. That's a man. It's a healthy, balanced man, in general. Healthy, balanced woman is 90% black, 10% white. That's a little masculinity that I have in me. And that's balance. Balance is not a masculine God. As we can see, it's brought a lot of imbalance. But we did that to see ourselves, to understand ourselves. And now it's second coming. So yay, we're here. We made it. Our souls survived.
Authority flowed from the Divine Father through earthly fathers, bishops and priests, and women were increasingly excluded from leadership roles. The divine feminine, so central to Gnostic understanding, was gradually erased from Christian theology. This erasure was not accidental, but deliberate. The complex Gnostic cosmology, with its multiple divine emanations and its critique of the Creator God, threatened the emerging Orthodox narrative of a single male deity whose authority was mirrored in the exclusive authority of male church leaders.
And I'm going to leave it there. So I think we have a lot of relearning to do, a lot of accepting to do, a lot of appreciating feminine value to do. And this is a struggle that I had with these men in my life. This is the exact struggle. I mean, I did another video today talking about what it's like to be a shaman talking to souls all day long. I mean, all of our souls are constantly talking. I'm cognizant of it because of my gifts. And with the fire captain, the fifth hero, he's 6'7". So what I did is 3 of the guys I met at yoga. So I talked to them at yoga, but I come home and talk to their souls because I wasn't ready for a relationship and neither were they. And they all had communication challenges. All of them can't talk about their emotions because they have emotional wounds. So safest thing for me, and I don't, I got Justin 6'3", Andrew 6'3", first firefighter 6'4", fire captain 6'7", and then JC is like 6'2", 6'3". Like, I gotta be safe, right? And I've already been sexually assaulted, and my wounds, I have fear of rape for men. Like, I had to keep myself safe. So in that scenario, what worked out best for me to go home, talk to their souls about the difficult conversations. And then I would see them changing when I would see them at yoga, and they'd be more grounded and more balanced. And, like the first Tim, we first met, like he was overweight and I was overweight, and we quickly both got in shape. And after a year, oh my gosh, he was a whole other man. It was so beautiful. So, but with Jack, the fire captain, one time I had a whole argument with him about, monogamy. Okay, Andrew Tate's in the lineup. Monogamy was on the table. I had to address it. So I was like, if you want to hire me for a relationship, and I'm the emotional center, and emotional intimacy, sexual intimacy is emotional intimacy, why do you want to outsource 20% of my responsibilities to other women or more? I don't know. Like, why would I want that job? Why would I, Kerry, want that job with this fire captain? Why would I want that? Why would I want to daily undervalue myself and fight this problem, my relationship? Why would I want to accept that about myself? That I'm not valuable enough to retain a single man? And yeah. So this whole masculine God thing, I'm up against, what I'm up against? But I'm a fighter. And my first name is Kerry, Irish, fighter. My last name is Israeli because my ex-husband's Israeli. It's still my legal name. Buzoglu. Buzoglu is the most underdog Israeli last name you could ever get. Underdog fighter. And I will bring honor to that name to Israel for sure. So I'm a fighter. I'm going to do it. And this is my task. But now I got to convince these men, right? That God's not just masculine. That God, like divinity, is a balance of masculine and feminine, and that we are made in God's image. And so we're masculine and feminine. But how can we be made in God's image if God is masculine? Doesn't make any sense. But then that's where you come with the stories like, oh, well, God created Adam and then Eve had to come from Adam's rib. It's not logical. But what's logical, that's a metaphor that his love for Eve came from his heart, which is right by his rib. There's so many metaphors in the Bible. They want to take it as fact because they need the hierarchy. They got to know. It's got to be knowledge. They got to prove it. So when you have that imbalance, then all of the possibilities of what people, want and, so-called need becomes super imbalanced. So I'm going to continue sharing my story. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. And, I'll be back tomorrow. Okay, bye.